Okay, there it is. And we can go ahead and get started.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to our first ever Yak STEM webinar. We are grateful for both our speakers and our guests for joining us today, and we are very excited to begin. But before we get into the purpose of today's webinar and our speakers, we, the Youth Advisory Council, who are moderating this webinar, would like to take a brief moment to introduce ourselves. I'll start off. My name is Malia Rogers Fleming. I'm a rising senior, and I'm from Calhoun County.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kamaria Green. I'm in Macomb County, and I'm an incoming freshman at Michigan State University.
Hi everyone, my name is Srijan Agarwal. I'm from Oakland County and I'm a rising senior at Novi High School.
Hi everyone, my name is Diama Krishnan. I'm in Saginaw County and I'm a rising junior at Saginaw Arts and Sciences Academy.
Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Kello Garrett. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I'm also an incoming freshman at Michigan State.
We would also like to extend a thank you to the entire YAC team for helping make STEM Advocacy Month possible. As we all know, this was a lot for the team and every role counted. So we appreciate everyone's efforts in making this happen and for being here today. Now that we have covered personal introductions, we would now like to quickly review the purpose of today's webinar.
Okay, the YAC STEM webinar is essentially the grand finale of our STEM Advocacy Month. And basically, for the month of July, the Youth Advisory Council have put together a series of social media posts and in-person activities that advocate for youth voices in the world of STEM and also push youth to pursue careers and after-school activities. And you can actually check out our Instagram, MI After School Partnership, where all of these posts have been uploaded. So feel free to check that out whenever you have the time. And also give us a follow if you have the chance. We would really appreciate it. But our goal is that through these posts and activities, we're able to bridge some gaps, right, between youth and the world of STEM, and in some ways support students as they begin their careers. As for this webinar, it's basically an additional step towards that goal to further ensure youth are even more connected to STEM by having that opportunity to directly listen and interact with STEM professionals in a panel style setting where you all are deeply encouraged to ask questions, speak, and take notes on what you learn. Dia, on to you.
Thank you so much, Kamaria, for introducing what this meeting is about and the purpose of STEM Month. We really appreciate it. And before we get into the panelists, we want to have a quick interactive activity in order to kind of just introduce everyone and kind of wake us all up before we get into the panel.
Yep, so for our activity, we'll be doing a simple Zoom chat, so no pressure at all. And for this activity, we ask that you try your best to describe in a couple of sentences or words how you're feeling about today's webinar. Don't worry about saying the right thing, we just ask that you please participate.
Okay, we got people feeling hype, people feeling inspired, excited. Yes. I'm feeling hype too. Honestly, I feel like that's the best word. Love that. Anybody else? No pressure. Again. Okay, excited. A lot of positive energy going on. Interested, also excited. Love this. Let me see. That seems like it was just about everybody. Okay, any final words? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, I think that's about all people have to say.
Someone raise their hand.
Someone raise their
Would you
hand.
like to say something? Otherwise, we can continue.
Yeah, Marina, if you have a comment, you can unmute and unless you raise your hand on accident.
Yeah, or put it in chat.
It might have been an accident. Let's just continue.
Okay, I'm thinking it was an accident.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that activity. And hope I make you evoke you up a little bit because now we can officially begin what you all been waiting for, which is our STEM panel. Each of our guest speakers and panelists are very accomplished STEM professionals who decided to take the time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today as they share their stories, knowledge, and advice throughout today's webinar. So without further ado, please welcome our speakers as they introduce themselves. Starting with Dr. Best. Is Dr. Best here?
It does not seem like it. So for now, we can move on to Mr. Wilburn.
Mhm.
Sure. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah. So I hope I'm doing this correctly, but just a brief overview of myself. I currently serve as a clinical research assistant for the Michigan Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. Very simply, just to put it in layman's terms, a very simple explanation of what I do is I interact with our research participants on a day-to-day basis and conduct some of the memory testing that we do here at our research center. If anybody's interested in medicine specifically within the STEM field, I would love to be able to connect with you personally to talk about how that connects. But yeah, looking forward to being on this panel today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilburn. Now moving on to Dr. Mayberry.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Hope my audio's okay. Yes, I'm
We can hear you.
excited and honored to be a panelist with you all this evening. As you can see on the screen, I'm CEO of Exam Experts Global. And over the past 2 decades, we've been fortunate enough to implement STEM programs as well as exam training and preparation programs. And we've helped students earn over $60 million in scholarships. So I'm excited to talk about, our journey. I've also served as a high school principal and a pre-K 8 principal. So I'm glad to be able to share ideas today, and also maybe I'll give you all some things to think about on your career and professional journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mayberry. For our fourth speaker, we have Mr. Billy Alman, who unfortunately was not able to make it due to a pushed-up flight. But in honor of his attempted participation in this webinar, we will still be giving him an introduction. Mr. Alman labels himself as an astrobiofuturist whose career explores the future of life in our universe. He studied architecture at Howard University and led with his imagination as he became certified in biomimicry and uncovered the biological ingenuity of the nature that surrounds us. As of now, Mr. Alman shares his inspiring and knowledgeable words through public speaking, social media, podcasts, and even his own show on Animal Planet called Little Giants, which he co-hosted with Bradley Trevor. And as a little surprise, because Mr. Alman really wanted to be here, he actually supplied us with a personalized video for you all, where he talks a little bit more about his journey with STEM. I have the video right here that I can play.
Greetings, people of Earth. Billy Allman, astrobiofuturist here. So sorry I couldn't meet with you all in person,
you all
but
can hear the
very
audio.
excited to hopefully get the chance to do that in the future. So just to dive right in and tell you a little bit more about me, a lot of my work is centered around the intersection of three things, and that's also where my title comes from. Space exploration, this idea of turning to nature for inspiration to create new types of solutions called biomimicry, and this idea of human connection design and how do we build better futures that connect humans to each other, humans to themselves, and humans to nature. And within this intersecting world that I live in, there are a lot of different fields that are related to STEM and other industries. And so engineering, psychology, and design are really at the core of what I explore around space exploration. Again, this idea of turning to nature and developing new types of technology that are more efficient and optimized and sustainable through biomimicry. And also, a lot of the work that I do is really using storytelling as a tool, and also studying our history and what makes us human, how we've developed certain behaviors and certain psychological profiles and perspectives throughout our existence, and also empathy as a tool of building connection and helping people to connect again to the natural world and to other people. So these are some of the heroes that I had growing up. I was a big nerd in the 90s, and so a lot of my inspiration came from seeing people who looked like me doing things that weren't typically the most common way that black men were displayed in TV at the time. And so all of these characters had some element, whether it was their brilliance or their sense of integrity or their sense of leadership or their inventive mind. All of these were things that I aspired to have and to be as a child growing up. A big part of my work and the foundation of my work was also rooted in the fact that I was blessed to have a career of almost 2 decades working for a place called Walt Disney Imagineering, where I learned how to be a world builder. I learned how to build cities through my imagination and experiences that would connect people to each other, and also to ideas of what's possible. So in this sense, through this work, I became a professional dreamer. My job was literally to dream and come up with big ideas and then turn those ideas into reality. So what inspired me to begin my STEM career? Well, a big factor in that was my mother, who loved nature, and she was my biggest supporter and my first superhero. So she was really the original point of origin for my STEM career, always encouraging me to pursue my dreams. And there was one particular event that took place in 2006 that was also something that was very pivotal in my career and leading me in the path that I'm on now. And that was Hurricane Katrina. After the events of Hurricane Katrina, I was studying architecture at the time at Howard University, and myself and 500 other students, we got on buses and we just drove down to the Gulf Coast to see what we could do to help. And seeing that devastation was primarily impacting people of color and people in lower income communities and people of color in low income communities, it left a very huge impression on my heart, and it changed, I think, the course of my life and the work that I wanted to do. And so in trying to go back to school and look at the world and say, how do we prevent this from happening? I did a lot of research, and one of the things it led me to was this quote from Albert Einstein that says, look deep into nature and then you'll understand everything better. And that's essentially what I get to do now. I get to go out and ask nature questions of how can we solve problems based on what things and organisms in nature have already done. So I get to ask questions like, how does nature build and maintain adaptive communities during times of rapid change? And when I get to ask these questions, it leads me to all types of amazing experiences I've had, including filming a TV show with one of my best friends and literally traveling around the world to identify ways that organisms in nature and technology can intersect to create better experiences and create a better world. And so a lot of the things that I find throughout these discoveries, I get to then put into helping people come up with solutions. And that's where the impact of my work really gets to shine through, is I get to help people have these aha moments where they not only see that there's a solution to their problem, but they see the natural world in a different and deeper way. And so being able to create futures, being able to help people see, not only people who look like me in a different light, but also people who do look like me see themselves in a different light is really one of the biggest things that is important to me in my work, and it's part of why I'm so proud to be an astробiofuturist. So really quickly, I think that a lot of the work that I do is a lot of the work that people like you all are going to be doing soon as well. The idea of being a multi hyphenated individual and having a career like that, I think, is what the future is going to be, in part because everything is starting to converge. All of these different disciplines are starting to have these incursions where they're colliding into each other and they're creating new types of industries. And so for me, the takeaway from that is it's all possible. So very quickly, I'm just going to go through this for the sake of time. More there are more impossible things that are going to become possible. So this is an example of that. When I was growing up, the idea of jetpacks was something that seemed like it was never going to materialize and become a real thing. And now we have jetpack races that are essentially taking place in different parts of the world. So whatever you think of, whatever you dream of, it's all possible. It might take a lot of time. All great things do, but in the end, they're still all possible, and a lot of what's taking place is going to make them even more plausible. So here's a little bit of advice: bloom wherever you're planted. Learn how to communicate to people who are not like you. Storytelling is a big underrated skill set, and whenever you have ideas, you're going to have to find ways to share them with the people that you need to collaborate with who might not think the way that you do. So listening to how other people think and being able to talk to other people who don't think like you is going to be a very important skill set as you go forward in your careers. And then expect failure, embrace failure. Failure is the ladder to success. And then I'll just wrap this up really quickly. Take big swings. That's how you discover who you are. Don't tell yourself no. Let someone else say it. If you have an idea and it's intimidating you, go for it. Every no is a gift to help you be ready for when you hear the yes that will change things for you. And then finally, kindness and humility will take you farther than talent. Be confident, but also know when to be humble. And if you want to connect with me, here's my contact information. Thanks so much. Bye.
That was it for the video. We thank Mr. Alman for his time and willingness to participate, and that concludes our introductions.
Okay, real quickly before we move on, Dr. Mercy Best did just join. So if we could go back to that one slide so that she can introduce herself. Thank you for coming, Dr. Best.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. My apologies. I was working
All good.
on my email and I was like, oh my goodness. But hi, everyone. I am a research fellow at the University of Michigan. I study Alzheimer's and other brain disorders. And the way I do this is by using brain tissue that is donated from people who passed away, but they decide to give their brain tissue to scientists so we can learn more about the disease. And I also make these things called brain organoids. So we take skin cells from individuals who are healthy or have a disease, and we make mini brains out of a dish from them. And lastly, I did want to update you guys that I have a STEM and arts education company called STEAM Kids, where we make these educational activities for youth, pretty much ages 5 through 12. And they just explore different topics in science and technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics in effort to get young people excited about science and becoming future STEM professionals.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate that introduction. If you don't mind, could you type the name of your company, Steam Kids, so that people can maybe look into it if they're interested?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, thank you so much. But for now, those were our panelist introductions. And before we get into the actual panel, I just want to quickly give out another huge, huge thank you to our panelists for today's Yak STEM webinar. We deeply appreciate your efforts and all that you guys have done to support our panel for today, because this quite literally would not have been possible without you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And before I begin, I just want to let all of our participants know that we will be allotting roughly 5 to 7 minutes of discussion per question. So if our panelists are done speaking and we have a couple of extra minutes left over, we will accept questions regarding that topic. However, we do ask that if you have any unrelated questions, or if we're unable to get to your questions, just please be patient and hold off until our Q&A segment at the end. And to our speakers, we encourage you to converse amongst each other, right? Because this isn't the type of panel where only one person can answer a question. Because again, we've allotted more than enough time for discussion between each question. So please don't feel afraid to do so, or even elaborate on any previous statements if you feel the need. But now that that is all said, let's get into our first question of the day, starting with Dia.
All right, everyone, panelists, we are so happy to have you here. Our first question for you today is, what inspired you to begin your STEM career?
I can get started. Um, so I am a multi-career professional, and I think Mr. Allman had alluded to that. So I do want to encourage participants and those of you on the call is just really pursue your passions wherever they may take you educationally and professionally. So I have a law background as well as a business background and an education background. But I look at the root of my interest in STEM from growing up with parents who were interested and non-negotiable about education. But I found a particular likeness in science and in mathematics and of course in technology. And that inspired me. And as my career went on, I became connected with the Detroit area pre-college engineering program, what the acronym is DAPSEP, if you all are familiar with that. And it was an organization that was focused on STEM programming. And I joined or became a partner with that organization, providing programs in exam training, preparation. But the focus was on science and in mathematics. If you all, of course, have taken these standardized exams. So that inspired me. But I thought that with my interest in STEM, it has to go further. So I allowed my imagination to develop other programs. And so I was fascinated with the interconnection between sports and science. So I designed a sports science course. I've been fascinated by the engineering aspects of Lego. And so we've created Lego courses. And so part of what my interest has been, even as a principal in leadership, got involved and we introduced the robotics team to Henry Ford High School. So that's what inspired me to begin. But the next step is how you utilize STEM and how it informs your practice wherever you go professionally. So I'll say that as a beginning response.
Thank you so much. That's so inspiring. Any of the other panelists, would you like to build on that and talk about like how you're inspired to do your STEM career and stuff?
Yeah, I can jump in. So for me, I had a very early experience working in a research lab for a summer. So I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and there was a program that would take local middle and high school students to the University of Richmond. And there we were able to do science experiments. So my first study was actually using the fruit fly's eye as a model for the human brain. And around that same time, my maternal grandmother actually started presenting signs of Alzheimer's disease. So, by hands-on experience of working in the lab as a scientist and then being directly impacted by the disease that I now study, it really solidified my interest in becoming a scientist. And then also, when I found out that I could get a PhD for free, that was very intriguing. So, um, straight from undergrad, I started my PhD program and haven't looked back since.
And me, I can jump in next. Um, So I think my interest with STEM started probably when I was the youngest of the group then. I read the book Gifted Hands by Dr. Ben Carson when I was like in the third grade. And it originally started off as like a punishment from my mother, to get me to calm down from doing other stuff that I was doing. But I really resonated with some of the things that he was talking about in the book and some of his personal life factors that went into why he actually went into medicine. Some of those same things wound up inspiring me to want to pursue that as a career. So from then, I fell in love with science. Ever since then, have not been able to find anything else that captures my attention as much. And I've definitely tried to see if there's other fields that I would like to go into just so I could explore all of my options. But medicine is it for me.
Thank you so much for those wonderful answers. Are there any questions from our participants before we move on to the next panel question? All right, seeing as there are no further questions, we're going to move on to our next question, which is, how do you envision your field changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
We can stay in a rotation. I'll feel free to address that question. I see the field of education as uh, there's a lot of room for innovation. And if we're talking about innovation, we have to include AI in the conversation. I really see the advent of AI having a great impact on education and how learning takes place. What I envision is a society where, of course, um, you have resources to take advantage, to utilize, to learn, but you want to make sure that you're connecting yourself to the right resources. What we're looking at as a company is how do we accelerate learning? How can you take something that might have been taught in 3 hours and be able to convert that learning module to something that could be understood and comprehended in minutes? And that's what we're looking at because as I watch AI and the speed at which information is being processed, ultimately I look at that as having impact in the educational space and the learning spaces. So from my leadership roles as a high school principal or pre-K principal, I'm looking at ways of how we can implement STEM into the learning framework within the schools, but at the same time help accelerate the learning of students. And I know, in particularly, just speaking from the communities that I've served in, where students there may be deficits where scores are need to increase, learning needs to increase. And so these are some of the areas that I see of how we can work to accelerate learning in our communities through STEM and through kinesthetic hands-on learning experiences.
For me, the Alzheimer's field is actually very excited about blood-based biomarkers, and that's just a fancy way of saying being able to test someone's blood to see their likelihood of developing Alzheimer's later in life. So in the next few years, is it 5 years, 5 to 10 years? I see us being able to diagnose the disease a lot quicker, but we're still struggling in the treatment area. So hopefully in the next 20 years, we'll see better options for treatment.
Yeah, this is a very loaded question almost for the medical field in general. I know Dr. Best mentioned and talked about specifically with Alzheimer's disease, but there's a couple conversations right now actually that are going around the medical field. And that's specifically on the concern of whether or not AI will actually be able to replace physicians. And of course, physicians feel and have their kinds of feelings about that. And then the general public and those in tech have their own interpretations of how that will work. I think it will actually be, if utilized correctly, and used correctly, I think it can be a very great symbiotic relationship where physicians can work with AI to have better diagnostic standards and treatment plans. So to kind of give a very long answer, there's things that are referred to as zebra cases in the medical field, which is essentially the exotic, the random one-off chances that happen with medicine. And then there are also those cases that are referred to as the bread and butter cases. So it's when people come in with a specific medical condition, they're presenting all the typical symptoms for that medical condition. And then because of that, there's a pretty standard like diagnostic plan and then treatment plan that goes with that. But with zebra cases, people come in with different symptoms. And the concern with that is even though it might look like it's presenting a disease for so many different things, it's called a zebra case because it's very out of ordinary. You have to really do extra research outside of the case to be able to have an understanding of what's actually going on with that case, right? So I think AI can help to fix some of those things and to address some of those concerns by cutting down on some of the time that's actually utilized to research things for those zebra cases. So AI can be utilized to access a very large amount of like case files, things like that, to be able to look into some of the random things that have happened for those zebra cases and save time for physicians instead of them having to go into the like library and look through all those encyclopedias or using like search engines to be able to look into different random conditions and things like that. They can utilize AI to be able to help leverage some of their time a little bit better and more effectively.
Thank you for your responses. If there's no further questions, I'm going to move on to our next panel question, which is, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced in your career?
I would say that one of the biggest challenges I faced was working, of course, in an environment, an educational environment, becoming passionate about STEM as well as academic test prep, and then launching out from the corporate space and creating my own business. And I heard Dr. Best say she has her own company. And, I just want to encourage everyone on the call, if you do have a dream of starting and operating your own company where you do it on a full-time basis, I would say plan and then go for it. It is one of the biggest challenges I face in my career, actually taking exam experts from one student and building it into where we've been able to work with over 40,000 students over the past 2 decades, and we still consider ourselves, an underground railroad. But the challenges and the benefits outweigh the challenges, but it is something to think about. But my message to everyone is this, your ideas can work. Your ideas can work. So believe in your idea. If you have something and you look at STEM and you're connected to it and you say, hey, I have an idea that I want to bring to the marketplace. Even given the challenges, don't outthink yourself. Don't think of ways not to do it. Think of ways why you can and will do it. And know that you'll face some challenges. But here we are 2 decades later, and we're still going strong and we continue to adapt. But that was one of the biggest challenges because if it's something that's hasn't already been in the marketplace or it's something people aren't familiar with, it creates its own set of challenges. But ultimately, if you believe in your idea and you believe that your ideas can work, it absolutely can.
That was super powerful. I hate to be a Debbie Downer after that inspirational thing. But for me, my whole experience in STEM has been challenging and will continue to be challenging. Um, I guess the biggest challenge is being a Black woman in STEM. And sometimes I think just being a woman, irrespective of the race, is the largest challenge. And then being Black intersects with that. Um, Finding mentors who look like me, who care about me, who respect the fact that I have multifaceted interests has also been a challenge. And in this current climate, funding has been a pretty big challenge of just getting the financial resources to support my research and keep it moving forward. So still with what Mark was saying, pushing through and still like pursuing your passions and your interests, even if you don't find advisors or mentors who support that, don't let that stop you. And finding maybe peers or your family or your friends and really leaning into that. One of the best pieces of advice I received from a mentor was listen to your advocates more than your accusers. So even if you have people who question you or make you feel like you don't belong, make you feel like you have to prove yourself to them, just remember that there's so many more people who are rooting for you, who support you, who want you to do well. So just leaning into that.
Yeah, actually, before I respond, Dr. Bess, if you can do me a favor and kind of explain, I know we've kind of had these conversations about the current political climate and everything like that, but if you could kind of explain what exactly you mean by securing funding and issues with that, and how that process even works for somebody who's in their PhD program, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so as a PhD student, you're actually a little bit more protected than my stage. So, most STEM PhD programs are fully funded, meaning they will secure your stipend, whether that be through you teaching, whether that be through a grant that the research lab that you're working in has. So, like as a PhD student, like you have nothing to worry about. Um, okay. So, as a diverse PhD student, a lot of the funding mechanisms that were surrounding diversity have been cut or canceled under this current government. So the opportunities to get funding are more challenging, but they're not impossible. So I would say, as a PhD, you're pretty good. Like you will have the funding you need. But at my current stage as a research fellow, you're supposed to go out and apply for grants. And a lot of the grant are funded through the national government. And Alzheimer's disease actually has been one of the targeted cuts. So there are these centers that support Alzheimer's disease research, and the current budget for them is proposed to decrease significantly. So that means that there are less opportunities to get funded through those. But there are private foundations. So there's like the Alzheimer's Association, which I actually have a grant through, and they are still committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so they still have opportunities to fund your research. But everything is super competitive right now. So you just have to come up with like a really exciting idea. You have to communicate it well. So I know the video that we were listening to, he was talking about being able to communicate to people who don't look like you. Like as a scientist, you really have to communicate and sell your idea. But there's so many opportunities out there to get funded. So don't be discouraged. If one door is not open for you, there are so many others that you can keep knocking on. And sometimes you'll actually find private donors. So, like someone who has been directly impacted by Alzheimer's disease wants to fund your research, and that's really exciting as well. Does that answer your question, Reggie?
Thank you so much. Yes, it does. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And thank you for entertaining that kind of like random question. For me personally, I am actually in the process of applying to med school. And so working with my wife to kind of like narrow down my list, figure out where we want to commit to for the next 4 or 5 years, maybe even more, depending on where I wind up doing my residency, fellowship programs, all of those kinds of things. And if it isn't clear just yet, Angelique, who's on this webinar, is my wife. And that's actually how I found out about this. But one of my biggest challenges, and she can attest to some of the conversations we've had about me feeling like I don't belong in STEM sometimes, me feeling like I'm out of place, interacting with other individuals, and specifically within the medical field. I know a lot of STEM careers are very particularly competitive. I can only really speak to the medical field though. And as I went to U of M for undergrad and spent a lot of time around those individuals, one thing I can say, and it definitely has its positive sides to it, but individuals are very competitive when they're going into STEM fields. And it can make for very hostile environments sometimes. I haven't had this happen to me personally, but I've heard of people that will actually like sabotage the study materials of other individuals, do things like that so that they can make sure that they're like pretty much weeding out the competition. And then also on in the undergrad level, especially, when you have a lot of people that are going into those like intro biology courses, intro chemistry courses, they identify those courses as weeder classes. So to be able to get rid of as many potential pre-med students in the earliest level possible, they'll make those classes really difficult, not just to make them difficult, but essentially to narrow down the list of individuals that they'll have to interact with on the junior and senior level classes. So your intro to biology, your intro to chemistry, they will be relatively difficult so that when you get to your junior or senior year in chemistry, they will essentially, by that mindset, get rid of the people who aren't actually serious about chemistry, aren't serious about biology, aren't serious about physics, so on and so forth. Also, that those upper level classes can be condensed down to more people who are actually going to put in the work. And that's on the mindset of the universities. That's the mindset of the faculty. I definitely have feelings about how that actually works and who it actually impacts. But I share all that to say that it can be very competitive, and I've experienced some of that competitiveness. But like both of the other panelists have mentioned, if you believe that this is the field that you're called into, give it your all. Know that there is hope. There are people that have done it before you and will continue to do it with you, and hopefully will continue to do it after you. And so you can definitely do it.
And can I just piggyback off of the weed or feed, what did you call them? Weed out classes.
Yeah.
So I actually almost failed organic chemistry because I was unserious. So I say even though these classes are intentionally hard, oftentimes the professor, another thing is like when you get to college, you'll realize that most professors are not trained to teach. They profess, right? So teaching is gonna be something that you have to take on the burden to do. Find study groups, go to all the office hours you can attend. And what saved me with Orgo was doing extra credit. So, like, take advantage of the resources. And even if you get a bad, I think I ended up getting a D. So, like, even if you get a bad grade in these courses, that doesn't mean that you can't pursue a STEM career. So, some people who got A's in Orgo are no longer in the STEM field, but I'm still here. So, don't allow like a test or a class or even a research experience to make you feel like you don't belong. And people will actually tell you explicitly that you don't belong. You have to know inside yourself that you do. And just continue to be resilient, even though it's frustrating having to be resilient all the time. Just keep doing it, and you will get to like the ultimate career that you want.
Thank you for those responses. I have a lot of questions for y'all in the Q&A section now.
Yes, but for now, if that's all regarding that question, we can move on to the next. Anybody else have anything to say? Any questions? No? Okay, I'll take the silence as a no. So you guys kind of already talked about this a little earlier in the discussion. But for now, I will just ask, how do you think AI, again, will affect your career if it hasn't already done so?
hmm Yes. So just to continue to build on the discussion that our panelists, that fellow panelists have mentioned, I see AI as being something that's here to stay. It is evolving. It's going to continue to evolve, but in my particular learning space, AI is for us to use it as a resource, is to utilize these AI platforms to you can use them for content creation. You can use them for video content creation, but it has to be managed, of course. And so I think in the area of the educational learning space, there has to be guardrails around AI. If you are leading the classroom, to make sure that you're avoiding the opportunities for plagiarism, or that you make sure that you're still finding a way to stimulate creative thinking and critical thinking, and those all important attributes are not forfeited by the advent of AI. And so I think that's a task that we have before us. And how do we keep the guardrails and establish boundaries where AI can continue to be an effective resource in STEM, but at the same time that it can be controlled and utilized for the right purposes. And so these are some of the things that we're researching and we're watching to see how it's going to evolve over time.
So AI as a tool has allowed, I guess, for faster processing of data and analysis, and also the ability to teach yourself things that you didn't know. So, like for me, I am a basic science researcher, meaning I do experiments at a lab bench. I tend to not enjoy being on the computer writing code. But AI as a tool has made it so that if I have issues or errors in my code, I could utilize different AI platforms to check and debug that and to try to problem solve. And that's in the positive, right? But in the negative, I think AI has led to um, people getting a little lazy in terms of using it to like write papers and write other content that would be best written by a human. So we're seeing a lot of that. And I would say AI also is a little scary of the way some people are misusing it. So I have very mixed feelings about AI, but I do agree with Mark. It's here to stay and it's only going to advance. So I just think the way that AI is advancing is sometimes outpacing our ethics as a society. So just being careful to watch that and use it in the ways that it was designed to use, but don't use it as a scapegoat to do the work for you. So I think AI is going to affect science in both positive and negative ways, and it's already doing so.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of the panelists with that one. Um, I think it's sometimes a joke that people kind of like go into the doctor's office and then will ask their physician to like question and things like that. And then they won't give them a straight answer, but then you see the physician like going to Google or now going to ChatGPT and kind of like typing in a list of symptoms to try to get help with a diagnosis. I think it's a little funny when that happens. Of course, if it were to happen to me, I would be a little bit upset and peeved. But that's just an example of how it's already involved in the medical field. Um, like Mercy said, there's pros and cons to that. But with that being said, one of the ways that I do believe that it can have an impact positively with the medical field and specifically with creating better diagnostic standards and then also creating better treatment plans. I think sometimes in our human brains, we can get very focused and laser focused almost on attacking an issue from one specific area or angle. And I think one way that physicians can continue to use AI is to be able to try to leverage that intelligence to figure out alternative ways or alternative treatment plans. Now, I'm not too sure on how effective AI is in being able to create those very brand spanking new, if we had to put it a certain type of way. I'm not sure how effective AI is in being able to create new treatment plans out of thin air. And sometimes human creativity is what allows us to progress in the medical field because it's literally just the process of just trying random new things and seeing how it gets us. So I'm very interested to see how that will take place within the next few years. And I do actually, when we get to the question about advice for the next generation of STEM workers, specifically relating to code and the coding involved with AI and other tech advancements, I do have some specific advice that I would love to be able to get to. So yeah, when we get to that question, somebody ping me about that.
Well, those are all great responses, and we're getting to that question right now. So if you want to like take the lead, basically it's just, what advice do you have for the next generation of STEM workers, as that's what we're all really hoping to take away from this conversation.
Yeah, so in my freshman year, I think it was like the first, second month, I was going to a brunch with our minority medical group that was up on campus. And one of the pieces of advice that I received from an attending physician that was there was every time you go into another step of your medical career, so whether that's undergrad, medical school, residency, fellowship, if you choose to do so, and those residency and fellowship, they're just the training programs for physicians. So if somebody's not familiar with those things, sorry about that in earlier. But very simply, what he instructed us is that anytime you notice an inefficiency, anytime you notice something that's sort of kind of working, but not working as efficiently as it can be working, try to think innovatively as somebody who's new in that field as to, hey, how can this work better? So for example, he gave the example of if you're going into your medical rotations and you're noticing that a surgical technique is sort of kind of working, but then you have this really new idea that you think you could try to patent and work out and be able to try to implement, then you should go for it and you should progress with it. And that's actually how a lot of medical innovation starts, is people that essentially look at the processes and they say, hey, this is cool, but I think we can do this a little bit better. And then come to find out they actually did find a better way to do that. So as it relates to tech and AI, I specifically would like to encourage everybody. Of course, if this isn't your type of tea, then don't do it. But if you can learn to code, I would encourage it. Because it has been something that I had the opportunity to learn in undergrad. And if I would have stuck with it, then it would have been something that I would have been able to leverage a little bit more in different aspects of my career currently, with processing data, utilizing all of those things, to be able to have an understanding of things on a greater level. So when it comes to coding and AI work, if that's something that you have a taste for and you do really well with, and I encourage you to get into that. If not, that's completely fine. But pretty much anything that you can get your hands on that you do well with, that you think might be able to have an impact on your STEM career, go for it, leverage it. You'll only make yourself that more valuable by having skill sets that are unique to yourself.
Yeah, what Reggie said, code, learn how to code, be good at it. There's too many tools not to do it. My other piece of advice is to become become the examples that you want, right? So oftentimes I know for me, I've gotten frustrated. I'm like, why are these people like this? But me sticking it out and staying in STEM, I'm positioning myself to start my own research lab where I can be the professor and the mentor that I've always dreamed of having. So even if you don't see those examples as you progress throughout your career, just remember like why you got started and what you wanted to accomplish getting in the field. Don't lose that. Don't lose sight of that. Don't become jaded or don't even internalize some of the things that you've experienced and project them onto other people. Like just be very intentional and very mindful and just continue to like be that incremental change as you become a STEM worker. Or I will even say next generation of STEM leaders, not just workers. Like you guys can do it. Just stick with it.
Yes, I concur with you, Dr. Mercy and Reginald, in all of your points. And just add, if you're interested in the educational space, whether it's K-12 or higher education, and you are committed to STEM, there is a need for your intellect. There's a need for your innovation. The thing about the education industry is that it moves very slow. It's in it, and I saw that when I came into leadership, just how slow it moved. So your ideas and bringing that in. So for instance, we were able to, in my leadership at Henry Ford High School, there was a greenhouse there that hadn't been used in some years. And so I was able to help lead the change of making Henry Ford a green school. And interestingly enough, once you got it going, there was a lot of interest around it. You know, I had mentioned earlier about bringing robotics and technology and upgrading the technology at the school and getting involved in the math games and things like that. So there is a lot of whether you're pursuing engineering as your primary profession or you just have a love for STEM, if you move into these learning spaces in different schools, bring your ideas with you because that will help accelerate the use of STEM in schools. And with your ideas and your innovation from what you're learning outside as well as in the school, it can help change. It can help make systemic change because we need smart schools. We need STEM schools that make that a primary focus within the school's curriculum. You know, one other point is that if you can bring partnerships in, let's say, for instance, from University of Michigan, what I see as a future is to really start interconnecting um, the universities with the K-12 space and bringing those competencies, STEM competencies, into the schools in various different ways and utilizing various resources. And lastly, I see the next generation is really interconnecting the global learning experiences and seeing yourselves in these global marketplaces affecting STEM and bringing those into the school environments at younger grade levels. And I think succeeding at this, that we'll open up, a lot of new opportunities within the schools and ultimately make the learning more enriched for those years that are forthcoming. And so that's really where I see it and where it's going. And so hopefully that's fruitful advice for those of you that are on the call.
Oh, this was just incredible, guys. And I'll pass it on to Cloud to continue the rest of the conversation.
Okay, so that concludes our initial panel questions, which means we can now transition into our Q&A discussion. So this is a time for you guys to ask any questions you may have. It's an open discussion. So at any time, come off mute, put your questions in the chat, and just feel free to ask anything. No pressure. If you feel more comfortable typing, you can just type your question in.
Dr. Mayberry, I have a quick question for you. So you mentioned scholarships and everything like that. Do you have a guide? As a rising senior, that is on my to-do list.
Yes, I do. Malia, am I saying your name correct? Malia?
Yes.
Yes, I can share some resources with you. We can have a conversation, and anyone else that's interested, I'll leave my information there. to because there's really several ways you can look at scholarship research. One is, of course, locally. That is what's in your locale, where you're at. We know that whether you're part, fraternities, sororities, also the big three and the other car companies, they all have scholarship foundations. So we think locally. Then you have the regional scholarship providers who you can tap into those resources. And there are several platforms, scholarships.com, FastWeb, and others. And then you have the national scholarships. And if you want to think about where would national scholarships be? Well, think about where you do business and where your family does business, where they go to do business. If they're dealing with national chains, it could be a restaurant chain, it could be um, clothing. Most or just about 100% of those entities have scholarship foundations. And if you're utilizing them, this is more of a capsulized definition or a capsulized answer to your question, but we can talk in more detail. But if you think from general to specific, local, regional, and national, and put together a strategy there. And then, of course, utilizing technology. They used to have just a big book of scholarships back in the day. And I remember I was a student at Cass Tech High School, and I was trying to get the book. And I'm left-handed, and they always told me I could get a left-handed scholarship. But when I got to the book, the information about the left-handed scholarship had been torn out of the book. So I wasn't able to, take advantage of that opportunity. But with the advent of technology, of course, now you can push a button and you'll have access to a lot of resources. So I'm open to share and I'll get the information to you. I'll leave my information in the chat. So those of you who are interested can reach out and we can have a conversation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would say make applying for scholarships like your part-time job. So try to apply for one each week if you can. It's all about quantity, right? So there's a lot of money that goes unutilized because people just don't apply. So if you apply to everything, you're bound to get something.
I was going to ask you, I don't want to interject because I know other people have questions as well, but I was going to ask you, you mentioned you had got your PhD for free. So how did you exactly get that?
Yeah, so straight out of undergrad, I applied to four PhD programs and one, what is it called? It's basically like a transition. So for some people, they're not able to get accepted into grad school the first round, and that's completely normal. It happens to a lot of people. So instead, post-bac or yeah, post-bac. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. So I applied to one of those, and so all of the PhD programs I applied to were fully funded, meaning they paid my stipend, they paid my tuition and all that stuff, and they gave me a stipend to pay for my rent and food each month. So technically, it's like I got paid to do my PhD, and that is very standard in STEM programs. So pretty much any university you look at, when you look at their graduate programs, this is after you complete undergrad. You can apply straight out of undergrad. You don't have to get a master's degree. In fact, you can get your master's degree for free along the way. So, like, I just submitted a paper my second year of grad school and got a master's degree because I did all the classes. So yeah, I always tell people like when you're applying for grad schools, like maybe apply to a few post-bacs and apply for your PhD programs. And if you get in, go straight to your PhD. If you don't, do a post-bac, get those extra research experiences and apply again, right? A lot of people don't get in on the first try, but just keep pursuing it.
Well, I have a question for you guys. I know some of you guys are like really into like the research field as well, and I'm someone who's also really into like STEM research and coding and stuff like that. So I just want to know like what you guys think about like as like soon I'm gonna like graduate from high school. So I want to know like what you guys think I should do when I get into college to like kind of like pursue like a career in like STEM research and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can go ahead and jump into this one. And so first things first, when you get to college, of course, transition well. So, what I mean by that is set yourself up for success. Don't be the freshman who's like, yeah, I'm going to do 18 credits and be involved in six different student orgs and try to have a part time job and everything like that, too. Set yourself up for success. So, if you feel like 12 is all you can manage, then start off with 12. That's perfectly fine. Or whatever is like the lowest amount of credits that you can do to be full time. And I share that just because there's a ton of ambitious people that you'll run into in college, and everybody has ambition. And I don't say that to be funny towards people. Everybody has ambition, but not everybody has follow through. And that's where you will distinguish yourself. Everybody has dreams. Not everybody wakes up and then does the work to follow those dreams. So that's the first step. Make sure you're setting yourself up for all the success that you can, bite off what you can chew and nothing more. And that will stand out a lot more than you being an individual who's trying to go to all the different classes and be involved in seven different professors' research studies and things like that. Do what you love. Also, that's another piece of advice. So if you find like, hey, I like psychology more, or I like neuroscience more than you think you like biology or anything like that, then do what you love because that's what's going to motivate you to continue to do the hard work that nobody truly like wants to do, if that makes sense. So start off there, and then when you do find that thing that you love, if there's a specific lesson that you gravitate to, professors love to talk about their own research, and if there's a lesson that you really resonate with, a very easy way to do this is after the lecture, stay behind a little bit and go up to your professor and say, hey, I really enjoyed today's lecture. It reminds me of so on and so forth, what you might want to do in the future. And professors also love to talk about themselves and their own research. So that's always an easy way to then be able to say, how does this relate to some of the work that you're doing? Or do you have any advice for me? So on and so forth.
Yeah, I also want to recommend, so like, do you already know what college you're going to, Dia? Is it Dia?
Dia.
Yeah.
Not yet. I'm still a rising junior, so I haven't I'm just like getting started in like the college application process because I have this year to like start thinking about it and then next summer with like the writing the essays and everything. So I'm just like kind of like making a list of colleges I want to apply to right now.
Perfect. So, like, once you narrow down, start to go on those websites for the colleges that you're interested in. And actually, you can see the faculty who are doing. So, like you said, you're interested in computational research. So, you can actually find faculty members who are doing that. And I would literally email them before you even get there saying, hey, I'm super excited about research. Can we meet for a 15-minute conversation? And see if you can get a position in their lab. So to Reggie's point, I did take 18 credits and I was in like eight different clubs, but I was only in one research lab. And I stuck with that lab all 4 years. And what that allowed me to do is to get a really solid letter of recommendation from my mentor. And to this day, he's still a mentor to me. Like if I run into issues or I need advice, he is still someone I can call and he will answer. So try to find a research home, a mentor who will like look out for you, support you, amplify you. And sometimes that's not going to be in your field that you're passionate about. So when I was in undergrad, I was studying fruit fly stem cell development, which is not Alzheimer's disease, right? But he taught me how to be a scientist. He taught me how to ask good questions and give presentations. And so I became passionate about fruit fly stem cell biology, even though that was not my initial interest.
That's incredible. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? I have another question if there's no one else. So Mr. Wilburn, you mentioned that like just because they're a professor doesn't mean like they're like a teacher in any capacity. So what size college or like university would you recommend? For okay, this is a two-part question because for someone like with the like wants to pursue accounting, like what size university would you recommend? And then the other question would be also like, do you believe in like creating your own major?
Those are some great questions. I'll answer the second one first just because I don't have much experience with that myself. I did not create my own major. U of M is a pretty expansive university. And that doesn't mean that people didn't create their own major there. I just didn't have the most experience with that and didn't have the closest friends that had that experience. So I'm sorry I can't give any more insight to that. But when it comes to the size of the university, one thing I would always and will always encourage young people, go to the university that's going to be the best for you individually. I went to a very small high school and then I went to U of M. So the size is very, very different from what I was accustomed to, but I was still able to succeed because I knew how to make the setting small for me. So yes, lectures will be large at larger universities. There'll be 200, 300 people in those lecture halls and things like that, but it won't be 200 and 300 people in office hours. So it might be 5 or 10 individuals at the office hours, and sometimes maybe even a little bit less. So always figure out what's going to work best for you. If you're used to a larger environment, feeling like you um, don't have to have don't have to know everyone in your environment and things like that. So if you go to a high school now that's pretty large, then maybe a larger university might feel more comfortable to you. But once again, it really is just going to depend on what's going to be best for you. If you're looking for something larger, then go for it. If you're looking for a smaller, intimate setting, then do whatever is going to make you feel most at home because that's what's going to also encourage you to succeed in that way. So, I know people who came from a really large high school who didn't really do well at U of M, and it wasn't even because of the size of the university. It just depends on how you choose to get connected to your resources and your success resources. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
This may be related to what Reginald's speaking on, but if you have the opportunity also to take advantage of college tours, I know that that's something that I've been a big advocate of over the years for students to really try to find the university or college, whether it's HBCU or otherwise, where you can find the right feel. And that campus experience, um, although it may not be long, sometimes you can get a good feel for a campus, even in a situation where you're visiting 10 campuses in a 7-day period. Sometimes you can find your sweet spot there. So S- Um, so that's something just related to finding the space that you can find that you can prosper in and with the number of students. So I went to Western Michigan University where we had about it was over 22,000 students at the time, but it still maintained a personal touch. That worked for me. Of course, I have friends that went to U of M, Michigan State. My wife's a Michigan State graduate. But the key was that you find what works for you. And then I did like the app where you said you're able to go in, it's not as many students in office hours. That makes a difference. That really does. And so these are things that you want to take into account. And then also you want to look at the support for first year students. Like what type of supports? And so we've had relationships with universities that do offer bridge programs or they offer other types of support. That's a key factor for you all to research when you're determining which university might be the best fit for you. Find out what they have for you the first years because all of the percentages and all of the data says that where you don't have that type of support, the percentage of students who succeed or graduate from that university, it declines. So you want to make sure that they do have robust support for first year students, and that should be something they can talk about whether you're at a college fair or whether you're on a college tour. And these are the important questions you want to ask and get candid answers from the university representatives so that that can help you make an informed decision. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you for all of your responses and suggestions for everything, honestly.
And one more thing, and I hope I'm not cutting you off, Mercy. But one more thing I wanted to actually come back to with creating your own major. A lot of majors are actually pretty expansive as to where they can encompass a lot of different things. So I majored in sociology in undergrad, and my specific focus was sociology with a concentration in health and medicine. I know individuals who did sociology as a major, but their focus was crime and law. I know others. Matter of fact, Angelique, majored in sociology as well, but her focus was education. For some of those larger majors, there's a lot of different particular paths that you can take within that major to be able to have a more focused and tailored aspect of it. And so, for example, using another topic like psychology, there's health psychology, there is neuroscience, of course, there's a lot of different aspects to some of these very large and expansive fields where you can play around with it. And another thing is you don't have to actually decide on your major until your junior year. I wouldn't recommend just like going in and just taking a bunch of random classes up until your junior year, but play around with different subjects and see what you actually mesh well with, because once again, that's where you're going to be successful. So if you have always thought you were going to be a biology major, and then you go in and you notice you don't really mesh well with the biology courses on a personal level, like you do fine on exams, things like that, but you really don't love to study it as much as you thought you would. But then you go into a couple neuroscience classes or psychology classes, and that's really where you feel yourself shining and enjoying the coursework that you're doing. Then I would, of course, recommend looking into that, even if that means you still wind up pursuing a career in biology or in psychology or in fill in the blank. It just means that you put a lot of your effort into understanding yourself on a deeper level.
Are there any other questions or comments from anyone?
Okay, I think that might be it. Well,
Alrighty.
thank you so much, all the panelists, for joining here and all the people who attended the this panel, the webinar. We are so grateful, and you guys like gave such insightful responses. It was such a like it was so like nice to hear like from you guys to like about university and your experiences, and it kind of gave me like from my personally like listening to all you guys, it kind of gave me like a better idea of like what steps I want to take in the future and stuff like that. So we really really appreciate you guys being here and sharing everything with us. So if can we all just give like a final thank you to all our panelists here today? And
Yes, of course. Thank you guys so much. I second everything Dia just said. You guys were so amazing. Like I learned so much just from sitting here. Even the conversations that